look at sympathetic joy from the Buddhist perspective. And for one, today is a good day for joy because the sun is shining. It's been shining for quite a while. It's been threatening to rain, but today the sun seems to have reasserted itself. So I think sunshine helps because part of what I'm going to ask you to do is walk outside. So in a bit, okay? So I'm just trying to think of how best to contextualize sympathetic joy, because joy can have many different meanings, okay? And I think the kind of joy we're looking at here that I mentioned yesterday is not the joy of excitability, you know? There's a lot of that going on in the World Cup right now. If you look at the stadiums of the fans that are cheering, it goes from misery to joy very quickly, you know? I was actually looking at the end of the Brazil-Belgium game, and it was incredible to see the dismay on the Brazilian fans' faces because their team was going to lose against Belgium, you know, and there was this feeling of... And then somebody scored a goal, and it was amazing euphoria, you know, and it was sort of going up and down, you know, euphoria to misery to euphoria. So I don't think that kind of euphoric joy is quite what we have in mind because...
Who won?
Belgium won.
Did they?
Yeah. So I didn't say we won. Belgium beat Brazil, yeah. So there was a great joy amongst the Belgian fans and great despair amongst the Brazilian fans. So we're not going to be working on this kind of euphoric type joy because I think that kind of actually makes the mind quite unstable. As you can see in the case of, say, football is a very particular example, okay? But there are many examples in life like that it's kind of really up and down and up and down. But it's a more kind of subtle, pervasive feeling that we're looking at, okay? There's actually a Buddhist term called Suka, which is an interesting term, and it's the opposite of dukkha. So I thought I'd mention it. Because Suka is a feeling of being filled up on the inside by an inner wellspring of joy that doesn't have a definite cause. It's not like your team has won, therefore you feel joy, or this has happened. It's more like a feeling of it just arises without any particular reason. And it's a feeling of kind of well-being, and it's also a feeling of connection to life. It's like I'm part of life, I'm part of nature. I feel connection to what I see and what I hear. And there's a kind of rejoicing and openness and affinity, okay? So there are quite a lot of aspects to this, and we will do a practice exploring it. So that's what's described by the Buddhist term Suka, which is the opposite of dukkha. Now dukkha is an interesting one because what dukkha means many things, but dukkha often is translated as suffering. But I think what dukkha really is referring to, the sense of me becomes more and more isolated and small. There's me in here feeling very defended and small and fearful, and there's the world outside I feel very separate from, okay? So dukkha is very much that feeling, okay? I am here, isolated, lonely, small, threatened by the big world outside, and I got a very few little enjoyments, you know, that I hold on to with dear life. I got my iPhone and I look at it and I do those things and I have a cup of coffee. And I protect my little enjoyments because I feel quite threatened, you know. If you think about a lot of modern life, it's like that, you know. People are quite, understandably, quite stressed, quite threatened. And they feel a bit like hemmed into a corner. And that corner is called dukkha, you know. And in the Buddhist teaching of the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha is teaching a lot about the fact that there's dukkha and how dukkha arises, okay? So a lot of the practices in Buddhism and also in mindfulness are working with softening that feeling of dukkha, you know? First becoming aware of it in mindfulness training, just actually noticing what's going on. Then learning to accept. Acceptance is always a big thing. The more we can accept, the more we can start to work around the edges of things, okay? So we accept, then we start to befriend and be kind to ourselves, and then we sort of dare to open, you know? Okay, so a lot of the kind of mindfulness self-compassion is preparing the ground where you can sort of open up more to life and feel this affinity and feel this connection. And that takes one into a different, very different kind of place. The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh called it interbeing, which is, I think, a wonderful phrase because it means that our life is one of interconnection with the rest of life. And where we feel, where that's alive for us, then we live our life in a very different place, okay? So this notion of Suka is taking us there, okay, into this interconnection. So if you can see that what we are, when we're looking at joy is part of the movement from the isolation of dukkha, okay, which I think all of us can relate to. It's that hemmed in, tight, isolated me feeling, which is often connected with a lot of difficult feelings like anxiousness or shame or anger or irritation. A lot of the time the emotions, which in Buddhism they call afflictions, they actually tighten the knot of me, okay? I think all of us can relate to that. I'm sure you can't you, that hemmed-in feeling, okay? So how do we open up from that to this wider feeling of connection, wider feeling I'm part of life, okay? I can dare to open, which is the movement from dukkha to sukha, okay? And joy is quite a key part of that. Joy is quite a key. It's one of four kind of qualities that help this opening, okay? And I think for people who've done the compassion training, you will know about the four immeasurable qualities. And they are basic friendliness. It's often called loving kindness, but actually it means a kind of friendliness to our inner world and friendliness to the world we live in. It's actually quite a nice notion to be friendly to the world that you move through. To have a basic kind of, can I make friends with the world I'm going to move through today? You know, when I get in the car and travel somewhere, be friendly to the people who are driving next to me, friendly to the people who I work with, that sort of thing. That kind of lays the ground for compassion, which is where we encounter suffering, there's a natural movement of the heart to open to suffering. Okay, so that friendliness lays the ground for I can begin to be responsive to suffering in myself and others, okay? So that kind of friendliness, which is a kind of openness, goes one of two ways. It goes the compassion direction, where we encounter suffering, but it also goes the joy direction, where we encounter actual, often quite simple things that we can take delight in if only we choose to, okay? Simple things we can take delight in if we choose to. Like just, for example, the sunshine, the nature here, you know? The smile of people's faces who we share our lives with, colleagues, family. So in this case, this friendliness is taking the form of paying attention to those things we can take delight in, which will generate the energy of Suka, opening the heart, okay? So it almost comes like a bit of an actual practice that we're actually going to be on the lookout for those simple things we can delight in and actually give them energy. And when we give them energy, there's a feedback, you know, we get something back from that.